So, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome executive coach, strategic partner for leaders of impact, author, and speaker, Sam Willing. So, welcome, Sam.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
So, thanks so much for joining and for giving us your time. So, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you share with us how your entrepreneurial journey started, and what led you into executive coaching, and the leadership space?
Yes, of course. Well, really what led me into it was I spent 29 years in corporate human resources with various sizes of companies, everything from big companies, including Microsoft, to small startup companies in biotech. And about 13 years ago, I had recently left an organization. And when I left that organization, one of the leaders there called me and said, there are some leaders here who feel very connected to you, and would you be willing to coach them? Because the part of HR that I always was sort of more naturally pulled towards was the relationship piece and the coaching piece and the training pieces. And so it was always my dream to be a coach because that is the part of HR that I loved so much. And so I started that way by saying yes to that. And then really over the last 13 years, my coaching business has grown very organically, only word of mouth. And with every full-time role that I've had, I have always just been very transparent and said, I also have this coaching business. I don't actively grow it. It is referral based and it's really important to me. It fills me up. And so it's really important to me to be able to maintain a certain level of clients
Yes.
even while I'm doing this full-time role. And no one has ever had a problem with it. And so it's always been a dream of mine at some point in my life to make the full switch over to being an entrepreneur, being a full-time coach. And doing strategic HR consulting versus being more, in one organization. And so this past October, almost a year ago now, I was with a biotech company that failed, which is very common in biotech. There's a
Yes.
90% failure rate for these companies. And so our drug failed. Which meant I was the chief people officer at the time, and I had to organize a mass layoff for the company, as well as laying off several executives, as including me. And so I had to lay myself off. And
Oh,
so, yeah,
wow.
so I did that. And it was sad. And also it felt a little bit like divine intervention. It just felt like the right time after that
Yes.
experience to go out and enter fully into being an entrepreneur and doing the things that I love to do the most and having more of a broad impact. I am about to turn 50 in a few months. My kids are all gone. And so it just felt like the right time for me to
Yes.
fully enter into
Like
that.
a new chapter.
Exactly, like a new chapter. And so I would say I've been an entrepreneur, but this is the first time in my life that I am solely focused on being an entrepreneur. So there's some new challenges and discomforts, and also a lot of excitement that comes with that.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. So, as a strategic partner, transformational executive coach, and speaker with over 25 years of corporate experience, do you believe that having this corporate experience gave you an advantage when you decided to move into the coaching and leadership space? And if so, can you give us any examples?
Yes, I really do. I don't think I would be where I am today without all of that history that I've had. And I think one of the things that I really believe sets me apart as an executive coach, because the truth is that the coaching market itself is very saturated. There are
Yes,
so many coaches,
so
so many
many coaches.
kinds of coaches, and really everyone calls themselves a coach in some capacity at this point, right? And so there's a lot of that. And I think the thing that sets me apart from other executive coaches is there are a few things. One is my deep corporate experience. And so
Yeah.
I have lived what my clients are living. I have been in the boardroom. I have sat at the executive table. I understand the pressures. I understand the dysfunction because it's
Mm.
been my job to drive culture and also handle a lot of the dysfunction that happens in organizations. And so I think having that perspective gives me not just the skills and the ability to really understand where my clients are coming from and be able to help them, balance the reality of the business challenges that they're facing and the emotional challenges that they're also facing in their roles. And it's also given me just a very high level of empathy because I understand it. I understand that when you are a leader in an organization and you have responsibility for the organization, every decision you make has trade-offs. And
Okay.
so understanding
There's
that.
always a sacrifice somewhere, right?
Yes, right. And so understanding that and helping them walk that line between, when do we always want to come to a win-win for the business and the people, and that's not always possible, right? And so how do we walk through those challenges and when our decisions impact people, how do we move forward in the most compassionate way and also the way that the business requires. And so that's I think that's one of the really unique things about me as a coach. I also I love to work with women CEOs and executives. I love to work with all people, but in this new entrepreneur journey I'm in, I am very, very focused on women. And I think, again, it goes back to I have that experience. I have been an executive and I am a woman. So I understand the additional pressures and challenges that women face, the sacrifices that they make, and the weight that they carry outside of their leadership roles that is unique. So I think those are some of the few things that set me apart. And I really don't think I would be. I don't think I would have the same passions and commitment to what I'm doing now without all of that lengthy experience in human resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, what have been some of your biggest lessons within your career? And again, you might have had multiple, but is there one that particularly stands out for you?
Oh, yeah, I think there's probably two,
Yes.
three. One is, I spent a lifetime operating in performance and perfection
Yes.
and like pursuit of never making mistakes and just this unrelentless drive. And I think there has been a big awakening in me over the last several years, probably about 6.5 years, where I've just come to this place of um, compassion and understanding and acceptance of my own imperfections and really letting that carry through the way that I work in organizations, the way that I work with my clients, the way that I'm able to connect with people is sort of at this very human level where it's like, yes, we are imperfect. And yet we are all capable of greatness. And
Mm.
sometimes we just need a partner to come alongside us and see that greatness in us and extend a hand compassionately and sort of lift us up. So I think that's one. And the other one that has been more recent, but I think probably the most impactful realization in my career um, has been this realization that nervous system regulation or how we respond to pressure
That's a big one.
dictates everything about how
Mm.
we are as leaders. And so that is a a story. My discovery of that really was I had this epiphany when I was laid off as I sat in reflection for a few months about my career and my own leadership journey, all of the messes, if you will, that I have been part of cleaning up, mediating, all of the terminations I've done over the last, 25 plus years. And a couple of years ago, I lost my mom to cancer. Definitely that experience for me changed me forever.
Oh, I'm
And
sure.
I entered into my own self work, really deep work, and that
Yeah.
work included nervous system regulation. And so understanding that. And then in reflection, once I was laid off, looking at the way that I showed up as a leader in my last experience, having done that work, and contrasting to that to my old ways of sort of operating in this like stuck in fight or flight stress response mode.
Mm.
Um, and then I started thinking about, all of the dysfunction over my career that I've been part of cleaning up. And it was really this light bulb moment for me around understanding that I can coach leaders and organizations all day long on leadership skills. I can draft emails for them. I can tell them how to drive positive culture. But the moment that the pressure hits, most of the time, those skills go out the window and the leaders revert back to whatever their stress response is that's been ingrained in them since they were young, right? And so
Yes.
it comes out as avoidance, aggression, control, self-protection. And those behaviors are the things that deteriorate relationships and
Yeah.
culture. And so I saw this cycle. I didn't have words for it before I understood the concept of regulation, but I saw this cycle over my entire career. And in fact, it was such a point of frustration for me because the organization, we would work so hard on culture and showing up well as leaders, and I would do workshops and coaching and all of these things. And then the company would hit this high pressure moment and then it was like, wait, what happened? Everyone's reverting to their worst leadership behaviors. What happened to all of these things that we worked so hard on? And once I understood regulation, it was like a light bulb. It was like, oh, yes, because they're making the changes with me that I'm teaching them here, but
Mm.
they're not making them here yet. And so
Yeah.
we have to have this connection, right? And that comes through regulation. So that for me has probably been the biggest epiphany
Oh
um,
wow, yeah, it's
in my
amazing because it's
career.
also about how you respond versus how you react, right?
Yes,
So yeah.
yes, yes.
So for the audience members who don't know, I'd like to talk more about exactly what you do in executive coaching. So some of the
Sure.
key areas you focus on are organizational development, people strategy, culture transformation. So can you share more with us about this and what makes your approach unique or different?
Yes, yes, definitely. And there's so much there. So just I'll hit on just kind of the main points or the things that I do the most often. So in terms of culture and people strategy, oftentimes leaders will come to me, CEOs will come to me, or HR leaders will come to me, and they'll say, "Look, we're trying to change our culture. We've got some dysfunctional behavior, or we're restructuring. There's a lot of resistance." And so when I go into a company, the first thing that I do if they're interested in the culture work is I do an assessment with them on where are we at currently in the organization.
Mm,
Trust is the biggest driver of how
absolutely.
healthy an organization is. And so I work with a company called Wild Leaders. And they're an amazing company, and they do a lot of work around trust and organizational trust. And they have a great assessment tool that I work with them on to assess the level of trust at all levels in the organization.
Mm,
From there, we create a roadmap, a cultural roadmap, if you will, and we make sure that we're aligning the business's people approach with their business approach, with the strategy. And so I love doing that work. I love coming alongside CEOs and executive teams. I'll go in often and do workshops around trust, around team effectiveness, around decision making, um, performance management, just making sure that we sort of create this ecosystem for them to be able to drive the kind of culture that they aspire to. It takes a lot of intention and a lot of work, right? And so for me, I would say, I'm at the stage in my career where I'm not interested in box checking or just taking people's money. I'm
yeah.
really only interested in working with leaders and organizations who really want to do that intentional work and are ready and wanting that change because it's uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
So that's really the organizational. And I think, in general, what sets me apart in all spaces I enter is sort of what I mentioned before around I have that deep corporate experience. I
Mm.
have actually lived and breathed and implemented all of the things that I teach in organizations and that I do organizations. And so it is lived. I have had success in turning cultures around. I have hit many roadblocks. And so I think that experience gives me a lot of credibility with the organizations that I go into
Mm.
because, like I said, I have a high level of empathy. I understand what resistance they are likely going to hit as we work through this process. And then on the executive coaching side, the entry point for executive coaching is different for most of my clients. Some of them come to me as I just described. They'll come to me because they want to make some cultural shifts. Part of the cultural shift, of course, is that they have to shift themselves because that saying of it starts at the top is absolutely true. And
Yeah.
so, as part of that cultural shift, we will also enter into some executive coaching work where we're identifying their own behaviors, how they're showing up under pressure, how they're leading the organization, their communication.
Mm.
Um, I always say that my role as coach is to bring leaders to a deep level of self-awareness about their impact on other people and
100%.
impact on themselves, right? Like the way that we get in our own way too. And so all of my work with them stems around that, depending on the leader. Um, we always start with helping them get very connected and identifying their core values, their why. One of the things that I find the most often with executives, and actually this happens not even just executives, it happens with just human beings, is that when we're in a corporate structure or we are an entrepreneur, we start to form our identity around what we do instead of who we are. And so we get very attached to our title, we get very attached to the outcomes in our business, and we start to hang on to those things very tightly with control. And so I want to get my clients to a place where they are not basing their identity in what they do. They're basing it in who they are, and they're measuring their success by the kind of impact that they want to have on other human beings, how they want to make the world a better place. Because when you start to base your identity on anything that you can lose, a title, status, money, the trajectory of your company, it's the danger zone. Because when we lose those things, which inevitably we do in life, things change and shift, or
Mm.
a company fails, these leaders, they lose their footing. They don't
Yeah,
know who they
because
are
they've
without that.
attached themselves to something instead of just being who they are. Like I've always
Exactly.
said as well, when you take away a person's title or
Yes.
position, who are they? They're just people,
Yes.
you know.
Exactly.
So yeah, it makes sense.
Exactly. So when I can get them rooted into like identifying their core values, rooted into who they are, focused on the impact that they want to have in the world, in their current role, in their current company, they start to let go of some of the fear and anxiety and control, some of the things that tend to get in their way of operating at peak performance. And
Mm.
then from there, we start working on specific leadership things. Many of them have a difficult time in conflict, having difficult conversations,
Mm.
especially with their executive colleagues, right? And so,
Yes.
um, and then now with this work around regulation, I also roll regulation work into my one-on-one executive coaching work. And it's interesting, I've been doing that now for about 8 months. My clients love it. The responses are amazing and the transformations are amazing because they're getting tools and they're starting to be intentional and learn how, in those moments, in the boardroom, when you have a trigger moment and you feel the physiological change that's happening in your body,
Mm.
you actually start to learn how to go, oh, something's happening. I'm getting triggered. I know exactly what to do to bring myself down, and they can calm themselves down in 90 seconds.
Yeah,
And then
that's amazing.
they can respond, right, instead of react.
Absolutely. So that leads me to talking about leadership, which we have touched on, or lack of leadership from both an entrepreneurial, business, and global perspective. So, what do you believe needs to change the narrative to improve leadership? And can you give us any examples? As I know, this is a very significant area of your focus or what you focus on. And what do you believe makes your leadership style different?
Mm, uh, I there's a few things. I honestly think that the key to sustainable, powerful leadership is regulation. Like
Yes.
I'm convinced now after my own experiences, after my career and my experiences there, and then watching, studying regulation and watching the transformations, I think that at the root of it, that is the key to powerful leadership, sustainable leadership, and personal peace, right? Where you're operating from a place
Yes.
of authenticity and integrity with yourself. So I think that is the key. I think for me, what sets me apart in my own leadership style, for me, one of my core values is compassion.
Mm.
And that
Which
has
is
been
seriously lacking in most of these
it's
scenarios or
seriously
environments.
lacking. And it's misunderstood, and I think that is, part of my message that I have pulled through my career for several years is that, this concept of compassion is very misunderstood.
Mm.
And one of the things that I think is misunderstood about it is that compassion sounds to many corporate leaders to be a soft word. They equate it with love. They don't think about the word compassion, but several years ago, the word empathy started to get a lot of buzz, right? It was like
Yes.
at this point in the game, everyone has heard that they should be empathetic, that they should be an empathetic leader, that you can't be a leader without empathy. And I think that that is true.
Mm.
But I look at empathy as the gateway to compassion, and then compassion as the key to meaningful change. And the reason for that is that the difference between empathy and compassion is that empathy, you are feeling with someone. Compassion, you are feeling with someone and then you're taking action to ease their suffering. And
Mm.
it's action that actually creates the change. Like without the action, things don't change, right? And so I think for me, um, this realization, which happened several years ago for me in my HR career, that compassion really is a game changer when you're dealing with humans. It is the action
Mm.
that makes the change or changes that person's situation. And so I started to study compassion several years ago. And one of the things that I really work with people to understand is what compassion is and that it requires action. Like it's not enough for us just to feel. We must do. That's the
Yes.
doing makes the change. But also compassion has to start with self. And
Yes.
we are so
Absolutely.
lacking in self-compassion. And so really that philosophy has been the philosophy that I have taken into every organization that I have led. It's been a fundamental core value for me, but also in the way that I interact with the teams I manage, with employees that I'm working through performance issues with that compassion. And compassion is not weak.
No, it's
Compassion doesn't
not.
mean that you don't also make the hard decisions you need to make for the business, right? So I think people get confused sometimes. They're like, oh, I compassion feels like it's going to put me in a position where then I'm not being strategic or I'm not making the hard decisions for the business. It's like, no, actually, sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to let someone go when things aren't working, right? To
Yes.
free them and free the business. And so um, I think that has been something over the course of my career, my ability to show compassion and also balance that with a very strategic brain and decision making. But compassion and my connection with people on a human level
Yes.
is, I think, really what sets me apart. Um, And I think it's like the regulation piece. It's compassion is the thing that creates the meaningful change. I've seen amazing redemption stories with employees who are struggling, and the manager was ready to cut them loose. And when you take a compassionate approach, which is have the compassion to have a direct, hard conversation,
Mm.
give them feedback. It's an area that so many people managers lack in, those courageous, direct conversations about performance and expectations. I've seen so many redemption stories where it's like, wow, this person, once they're given the opportunity and the direct feedback and expectations are set, and the manager's being very intentional with how they're managing them, this person rises to the occasion and their performance rises to the occasion, and
Yeah.
we watch them flourish versus I think sometimes what our human instinct is, which is just to cut them loose because we actually want to avoid the hard
Yeah,
conversation.
and avoid the discomfort of
Yes,
the communication.
yes, yes.
So what would you say some of the key pillars you use when you partner with executives, high impact leadership skills, and why is this so significant in the work that you do?
I would say some of the things that we've touched on, identifying their core values
Yes.
and identifying what their identity is rooted in, and then making some massive shifts there with them. Helping them identify and get very clear on how they're measuring success. So, what
Yes.
does success look like if we are actually measuring our success by our impact on people?
Yes.
What does that look like for how you show up as a leader? And then there are some other things that I consistently coach on. One of them is how we operate in the discomfort. So, how we are viewing conflict and hard conversations. There's a concept called the drama triangle versus the leadership triangle that I learned about 15 years ago, and I have coached on it. I use it with every client. I use it in my personal life. It's highly effective. It will be in my new book, which will be great for people to understand it. But that is definitely something that we spend a lot of time on it, and a lot of it has to do with how we show up in discomfort.
Mm.
Um, and then where we are operating, whether we're operating from an internal locus of control, meaning I I have control and agency in my life, and I'm focused on the ways on making choices and decisions on how I show up, versus an external locus of control, which is, all I am a victim in this, and all of these things that I can't control are swirling on, around me, and I'm just sort of reacting to them. And so really moving clients to a strong, grounded, internal locus of control, where even in the midst of high pressure, high stress, uncontrollable things happening around them, they
Mm.
are so rooted. It's like, no, but I see in this situation where I have agency, where I can make choice, and I'm going to actively and intentionally make a choice how I'm going to show up. So a lot of work around that as well.
Amazing. So, with that being said, what would you say has been your biggest career highlights? And again, you might have had multiple, but what really stands out for you?
Oh, it's so funny because I would say that the last position I was in was one of my biggest career highlights, and it was the most difficult career move I ever made. I stepped in, I said yes to a chief people officer role at a biotech company, and I said yes 2 days before my mom passed. And
Mm.
I was definitely not in a great emotional space to say yes. I don't think I was really thinking through the impact of what saying yes to this job would mean. I said yes. And I stepped in. I started 3 weeks after my mom passed. I stepped into a company where it was a total culture turnaround situation. It was a mess, so much dysfunction, deep, kind of dark things that I had to um, you know, undo and set the path straight, and I was there for 18 months before our drug failed. There were many times where I sat in some frustration with
Mm.
myself for saying yes to that, thinking, why am I doing this? I didn't even give myself ample time to grieve and look for a job. But in hindsight, it was a career highlight for me because in that role, I was actually able to deploy all of the culture, the HR skills, the cultural work, the leadership workshops, everything that I had practiced and learned in throughout my career, I was able to use and deploy in one place and truly experience the culture turning around. It was amazing. It
Wow.
was 7 months of really hard work. Um, with a lot of complicated work. And then it was like the culture turned around and the executive team was high functioning. And it became, even in the midst of a lot of stress, because we knew that there was a possibility that our drug might fail, even in the midst of all of that, all the way through the layoff, even I look back and it was like, wow, I don't think that I would be where I am today. I don't think I would be writing the book I'm writing without that experience. It was almost like the perfect bow to wrap up
Yes.
my HR
Well,
career.
it
Yeah.
also it added, I guess it's added another layer to your coaching as well,
Yeah.
based on
Yes,
being entrenched
absolutely.
in that scenario or situation.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So, Sam, you're also the author of a new book coming out later this year. So, can you share with us a little bit more about the inspiration and motivation for writing the book? And was this process an organic process for you, or was it challenging? Because for some people, writing is like, natural, and then for others, it's challenging. So, I'm just curious from your own perspective.
Yes. Oh, it's such a good question. Okay, the book, I'm really excited about it. The book is called Regulate to Rise.
Oh, wow, amazing title.
Yeah, the hidden key to powerful leadership and personal peace. And it really is about a lot of the things that you and I've talked about. It's about, my a lot of stories from my career over, the impact that dysregulated leaders have on organizations, on culture, on themselves. On identity, and then on my epiphany around regulation, and then what regulation is, and then how to integrate it into your life and your leadership. And so I am really excited about it. It wasn't a book a year ago I ever knew I would be writing. I always have really wanted to write a couple of books, but this wasn't the one. Actually, funnily, I used to say that when I left corporate HR behind, I was going to write a book, a tell-all book called The Tales of a Corporate Cleanup Girl.
Oh,
And
wow, I love it.
I was like, and I'm just gonna like tell all the stories about all these, leaders. And anyway, I'm not writing that book. I'm writing this book. And so, in terms of process, I think I'm hoping that it launches in early November.
Yes.
And this is my first book. So it has been the most challenging work I've ever done and the most rewarding and therapeutic. It really
Yes.
is a culmination of, all of my career and my learnings, and even, walking through the grief of losing my mom and, this regulation piece. And so, um, there was something really special during the initial writing of it, where I probably spent 20 to 25 hours a week, which was the benefit of being laid off. I had time on my hands to just sit and write. And some days it came really easily, other days it felt kind of clunky, but it was fairly easy for me to write the content because it's what I've lived.
Yes.
They're my stories, it's what I've lived. Um, there's also a lot of research in there around nervous system regulation. And so it does feel like it's been an organic process. It's funny. I thought that the writing of the book would be the most challenging part. What I'm experiencing right now, so right now I'm in final editing.
Oh, wow, that's exciting.
Yes, it's so exciting. And what I'm finding is that I actually feel like this is the most challenging part because I'm noticing a lot of internal resistance. And
Yes.
I think that partly it's that the closer, this is my last chance to change anything, to write anything more, this is it. And I think that once that's done, it's like it feels very vulnerable to like be releasing a book out into the world.
Yes.
And so I think maybe this is the most challenging part, like actually, finalizing it and then putting it out there and getting it out there and talking about it. It feels vulnerable on sort of a whole new level for me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. But I'm sure it's going to be a phenomenal book once it's
Thank
out.
you. Thank you.
So you're also the founder and CEO of the Compassionate Collective. So
Yeah.
can you share with us more about that, and what the inspiration for you starting this amazing project?
Yes, I'll give you the very short version. The Compassionate Collective is a social impact marketplace. We sell handmade, imperfect heart products, and we started about 6.5 years ago. I had started a podcast at the time called Imperfection Wins, and it was really about embracing imperfection as part of my own healing journey. And shortly after I released the first episode, I met a man. His name is Gary. He is our artist. And he, at the time, was living, a really hard life in poverty, and having a hard time. And he started making these little wooden imperfect hearts. And
Oh,
my
wow.
dad knows him. He brought me some of the hearts after I launched the podcast. I fell in love with the idea of the hearts because they were imperfect and made from scrap wood. And it really had a lot to do with this concept of embracing the beauty and imperfection. And so I started sending them out to podcast listeners. And really, have been so many twists and turns. We could do a whole podcast on the heart story. It's such a beautiful story
Yes, we can.
about
We will
connection and
definitely do that.
humanity. Yes, it's so beautiful and compassion. But the short of it is that people love the hearts. And so I started to get asked to speak a lot on compassion and compassionate leadership and imperfection. The hearts started to go with me everywhere I go. So in my corporate roles, I would have a big bowl of imperfect hearts on my desk. We give them out with encouragement cards that say things like, "You are loved," or say things like, "Use this heart as a tangible reminder of the beauty and imperfection," or
Mm-mm.
as a reminder that you are loved, you are valued, you are enough. And people just, they love the message, they love the story, they love what the individual imperfect heart represents and means for them. And so to this point, we have put over 10,000 hearts out into
Wow,
the.
that's incredible.
We have bracelets, we have ornaments, we have all sorts of different imperfect heart products. Gary has his first home that he owns. He has his first bed in 30 years.
Sure,
It,
that's beautiful. Wow.
it just has been, and we're just really close, and I'm actually going to see him later today. And so it's been just a beautiful, joyful part of my work, and definitely the most organic work I've ever done. The only work I've ever done that I really have just, I haven't known what to do with it. I just show up and say, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? And I get parts out, and it just organically has grown into this beautiful business.
That's amazing. So, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to those looking to pursue a similar career or those who are wanting to start their own business or entrepreneurial journey? And what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered?
I'll do, let me say legacy first because it
Okay.
really is what I was just talking about. So, um, I really want to leave a legacy of compassion. I want to
Mm.
be remembered as a person who saw people suffering,
Mm.
took action to ease their pain, whether
Yes.
that be through, emotionally, physically, financially. I want that. That's so important to me. And I don't ever want to be at a point in my life where I'm so busy or I'm so consumed with my own stuff that I'm not paying close attention to the suffering and the people around me and what their needs are. And so that is really the legacy that I want to leave. And it's the legacy I hope to pass to my children. Um, I think, in terms of advice, I would say, one, learning how to um, come to peace with imperfection
Yes.
and feeling, giving yourself a heavy dose of self-compassion in all things. Not that you're letting yourself off the hook, not that you're, excusing it's, but coming to a place where you are no longer spending your energy ruminating on mistakes, past mistakes, or beating
Mm.
yourself up
There's no
unnecessarily.
point because it's
There's no
past.
point.
You can't fix it. So
No. And so I think coming to terms with your own imperfection and treating yourself with a heavy dose of self-compassion is, I think, one of the best things that
yes.
you can do in life. I think it's really a requirement to be a very authentic and present and successful entrepreneur
Yes.
because I am learning that failure is just kind of part of it, learning as you go. You can't always, I'm someone who really likes to be prepared. And so I'm finding that sometimes I can get so caught up in the preparation of things that
Yes.
I actually move forward in things. It actually becomes a stumbling block. It's like, well, I'll right after I learn this next thing, I'll move forward. Right
Yes.
after I expect this message, I'll be on the podcast, I'll do it. And it's like, no,
You
you
have to
just
just take the
gotta
leap of
go.
faith because there's
Yes,
always going to be things in life that come up or, whatever. So it's like, well, is there ever a right time? Not really. It's like
yes,
you just have
yes. And
to
you can
jump
find
in and just do it.
we can get ourselves so stuck,
Yeah.
So I think that and then learning how to sit in discomfort and
Yes.
be okay with the unknown
Yeah.
and really having this deep belief that life is happening for you and not to you, and looking for the ways that you can have agency. Where do you have control? Where can you make decisions
Mm.
and be intentional about how you're showing up and interacting with the world? And I think the last piece, which is more of a tangible piece that I'm learning now as I go along, is become very aware of your gifts and what you're good at, and then hire people to help you with the rest.
Yes. Focus on your strong points and let other people do the things that
Yes,
you're not so good at. Yeah,
yes, yes.
100%. Well, thank you for joining us today, Sam. So, if people would like to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
They can follow me on Instagram, and my handle is at Coach Sam Willing.
Okay.
They can connect with me through my website, which is samwilling.com. Those are probably the best. I'm also active on LinkedIn, so I'm
Okay.
just Sam Willing on LinkedIn. But yeah, I would love to connect with anyone interested. And Karen, thank you so much. I'm just super grateful for the time and the conversation. It's been a really fun way to start my day.
No, well, wonderful. And hopefully, we can have you back in the future and talk more about your book and more about your other projects. So, it's been wonderful having you. Thank you so
I
much.
would love that. Thank you. Have a great day.